Hello, everyone. Tonight we're diving into a story that begins like a quiet afternoon in a picture-perfect home, but unravels into something far more chilling. Picture this sunlight trickling through lace curtains, a freshly polished dining table, cucumber sandwiches on a porcelain plate. And then, a knock on the door changes everything. You think you know your family. You think 42 years of marriage means something. But sometimes, what you don't see coming is what cuts the deepest. And if you're not careful, you might not survive the truth at all. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop your city and local time in the comments so I can see just how far this story reaches. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft hum in the background, and let's begin our journey tonight. The lace curtains in my dining room swayed gently in the afternoon breeze as I laid out the good china cups, so delicate they clinked like wind chimes if you tapped them just right. I was setting the table for two. Sage had called earlier, her voice tight and breathless. Can we talk, just us? Sage, Ember's older sister, we'd always been polite, if distant. I couldn't remember the last time she'd visited me alone. Still, I said yes, because something in her voice made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. I smoothed the cream-coloured tablecloth, the same one I'd used for Christmas, Thanksgiving, baby showers, and funerals. My life was stitched into that fabric, warm memories, heavy silences. At 64, I still believed in hospitality, but that afternoon, my hands trembled ever so slightly as I adjusted the lemon cake on its platter. The doorbell rang. When I opened it, Sage stood there like someone who'd seen a ghost. Her eyeliner was smudged, her knuckles white around her purse strap. Not even the cucumber sandwiches or the lemon cake could soften what she was about to tell me. Naen, thank you for seeing me. Of course, dear. Come in. We sat. She didn't touch the food. Her gaze never left her clenched hands. Sage, what's wrong? Silence. Then she looked up. And what I saw in her eyes made my skin go cold. Guilt, pain, and love. A twisted kind of love. The kind that makes you tell the truth, even when it shatters someone. I don't know how to say this without destroying everything, she said. My pulse slowed. That old, awful stillness that only comes when you sense your world shifting under your feet. Try me, I said. She looked down again. It's about Ember and Damon. I held my breath. They're having an affair. She said it quickly, like she was ripping off a bandage. For a moment, I couldn't feel anything. Not my hands. Not my heartbeat. Just the ringing silence of betrayal. I've known for weeks, Sage whispered. I saw them together at that cafe downtown, holding hands, kissing. I didn't flinch. 42 years of marriage teaches you not to flinch. Are you sure? She nodded. I confronted Ember. She laughed, said it wasn't my business. Said you were old and boring, that Damon deserved someone exciting, that once the divorce was final, she'd make sure you got as little as possible. There it was. My dignity, reduced to a strategy. My life, a disposable detail in someone else's plot. And why are you telling me this? Because it's wrong. Because Wade doesn't deserve this. And because you've been kind. Always. I looked at our hands, mine lined and weathered, hers trembling and smooth. Does Ember know you're here? No. She thinks I'm at work. Good. Let's keep it that way. Something in her face shifted confusion, concern, but I just smiled and poured tea with steady hands. Naen, What will you do? Nothing. Her eyes widened. Nothing. I took a sip. I'm going to smile, nod, pretend I know nothing, let them believe they're winning. I paused, then met her gaze directly. Some games, I said, require patience. I've been patient my whole life. Sunday came, with that familiar calm, the kind where the ticking clock seems louder than usual, and even the birds outside the window feel like they're waiting for something. I'd set the table with my best linens again, though this time not for sentiment. It was part of the performance now. The pot roast was in the oven. Wine was breathing. I had even ironed my blouse, a soft blue one Damon used to say made my eyes look bright. Today, it was camouflage. When Ember arrived, she swept through the front door like a breeze that left dust in its wake. Her blonde curls were perfect, not a hair out of place. Her heels clicked across my hardwood like tiny hammers driving in the nails of some invisible coffin. "Naen, you look incredible," she said, her arms open as if we were old friends in a coffee commercial. "This dress, I got it on sale. Can you believe it?" She twirled like a debutante, then leaned in to kiss my cheek, the same cheek her lip gloss probably smeared against Damon's the day before. "Thank you, dear," I said with a smile. "Wade should be here shortly. Would you like some wine while we wait?" "That would be lovely." She perched herself at the kitchen island, crossing her legs like she was posing for a lifestyle blog. "Actually, I was hoping we could talk, just us girls." My hands didn't shake as I poured her glass. "Of course," I replied. "What's on your mind?" She tilted her head, the way I've seen cats do when they're toying with something half alive. "I've just been worried about you and Damon." The audacity was Olympic level. "Oh," I asked, keeping my tone gentle. "Why would you say that?" "Well," she leaned forward, voice low and syrupy. "There's been tension. You two seem so separate. And I just think life is short. You know, you deserve happiness. Real happiness." I took a slow sip of my own wine. "You think I should get divorced?" "Oh, no, no," she said quickly, faking concern. "I would never say that, but sometimes staying together does more harm than good." I stared at her over the rim of my glass. "You're very wise for your age, Ember." She beamed. If I had blinked, I would have missed the flicker in her eyes when she thought she'd planted the seed. Wade arrived soon after. His usual goofy smile dimmed slightly, though he didn't seem to notice anything off. He kissed me on the cheek, then wrapped Ember in a hug that made my stomach turn, not because of the hug itself, but because I knew what she was thinking during it. Damon arrived 20 minutes later, still in that grey suit that smelled like arrogance and betrayal. He kissed my cheek too polite, perfunctory, and muttered something about traffic and emails. I could smell Ember's perfume on his collar. We sat down to dinner, and I played the part of the proud matriarch, passing potatoes, smiling at jokes, making small talk about Wade's work project and Damon's imaginary client calls. But I saw everything, how Ember's eyes kept flicking to Damon's across the table, how her foot brushed against his ankle, how Wade, sweet, unsuspecting Wade, didn't see any of it. Over dessert, I asked them about their upcoming trip. "Oh, we haven't settled on a location yet," Ember said, twirling her fork, "but somewhere warm, somewhere private." "Sounds like you need an escape," I said, my voice silk over steel. She nodded, smiling too wide. "Exactly." Later, while Wade helped me with the dishes, I could hear Damon and Ember murmuring in the dining room. The way their voices dipped in and out of audibility felt like mosquitoes in the ear. "Not much longer." "She suspects." "No, she doesn't." Wrong. I knew. And with every passing day, I was gathering proof, watching, listening, preparing. When Wade left, Ember stayed behind under the pretense of helping with the cleanup. She stood too close to Damon as he fetched his coat. Her hand brushed his lower back. They thought I didn't see. I saw everything. As the door shut behind them, I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. The kitchen was quiet. The scent of lemon dish soap still hung in the air. They wanted war. They thought I was unarmed. Let them think that... Let them. That night, as I lay in bed beside Damon, pretending to be asleep, I remembered a phrase my grandmother used to say. You don't have to raise your voice if your silence is loaded. I was done raising my voice. But my silence, it was armed to the teeth. 3 days after that carefully staged dinner, I took the train downtown and walked into an office that smelled like leather, eucalyptus, and quiet power. It belonged to Patricia Chen, sharp as a scalpel, cool as marble, and just the kind of lawyer you wanted on your side when your enemies were smiling in your face. I'd found her through a friend at the library book club, who whispered her name like a secret weapon. I don't want to waste your time, I told her as we sat across a wide walnut desk. I'm not ready to file anything yet. I just want to understand what I'm up against. Patricia steepled her fingers. You're the one whose husband is sleeping with your daughter-in-law. Yes. I blinked, that direct, huh? If we're playing chess, she said, we don't have time for checkers metaphors. I liked her instantly. Over the next hour, we reviewed every asset Damon and I shared the house, the vacation properties, the business, the investment accounts. But when I pulled out the trust documents my grandfather had drawn up decades ago, Patricia's eyes lit up like she'd just found a winning lottery ticket. Well now, this changes everything. How so? This isn't just any trust. This is an intergenerational bloodline trust. Your family's assets, especially the house, are protected from anyone who isn't a direct descendant. That includes Damon. I sat straighter, even if we're married. She nodded. Especially in the case of divorce caused by adultery, there's a clause, rare but binding. If you can prove infidelity, your husband forfeits any right to the trust's assets. That includes your house. My house. My sanctuary. The place where I'd raised my son, nursed my mother through her final days, planted daffodils every spring. Damon thought he could hand it to Ember like a party favour. Not on my watch. What do I need to prove the affair, I asked? Photos, texts, witness statements, anything that shows romantic or sexual involvement while married to you. I thought of Sage, of the messages Wade might not have found yet. I suddenly had an entire strategy building in my mind like scaffolding. And if I don't say anything now, if I let them think I'm going along with the divorce? Patricia smiled like a cat who had just caught a mouse mid-prance. Then they'll play right into your hands. That night, I set the dinner table again. Damon was unusually cheerful. You know, he said as he passed the salt, I think we're doing this the right way, maturely, respectfully, not like other couples. I nodded. Yes, it's all very civil. He didn't notice the way my tone flattened like old soda. He just smiled wider and spooned mashed potatoes onto his plate. I excused myself early and went to bed. But instead of sleeping, I reviewed every document Patricia had emailed me, highlighted, noted, printed. I even opened a new folder and labelled it quietly. Operation Never Again. I'm not proud of the name, but I wasn't trying to win awards. I was trying to win back my life. The next morning, I started phase 1, letting Damon think I was giving up. I called the family lawyer, the one Damon always preferred, and scheduled a discussion. I made sure to act confused on the phone. "Oh, I just want what's fair, whatever Damon thinks is best." I could practically hear his satisfaction from the other end of the house. He came into the kitchen that night with a glass of wine and a self-satisfied smirk. "Piton can see us next week. We'll keep it simple. No drama. No drama." As if betrayal was a scheduling error. "I'd appreciate that," I said sweetly. "You've always been good with paperwork." His eyes sparkled like a man who believed he was getting away with something. And in a way, he was, for now. Later that week, as I was folding laundry, I came across one of Damon's shirts, crisp, pressed, and faintly smelling of a floral perfume I hadn't worn since 1993. I held the shirt up and laughed, not bitterly, not angrily, just laughed. It was almost cute how sloppy he was being. A few days later, I returned to Patricia's office with a folder of my own. It contained printouts from Ember's social media, screenshots from Sage's texts, and a short video Sage had secretly taken of Ember kissing Damon's cheek while they waited for takeout. It wasn't scandalous, but it was enough to build the foundation. Patricia looked impressed. I have to say, she told me as she reviewed the evidence, "You're more organised than half my paralegals. 42 years of marriage will teach you how to keep track of lies," I replied. Before I left, I asked her a question I hadn't dared to voice before. What happens if I just let them win? What if I walk away with nothing but the condo and the alimony? She looked up sharply. "Why would you do that?" "Because I want them to feel safe. I want them to think they've won." Patricia stared at me, then leaned back in her chair. "You're playing a very long game. Mrs. Morrison." I smiled. "I've had decades to practice patience. I think I can wait 60 more days." The waiting room at Piton and Associates smelled like ambition and aftershave. Sleek leather chairs, overpriced orchids, and a receptionist who spoke in hushed tones as if afraid to disturb the marble walls. Damon sat beside me, legs crossed, scrolling through his phone like this was just another meeting on his calendar. Across from us, Ember and Wade waited silently. Ember kept one manicured hand on Wade's thigh, the other wrapped possessively around a designer handbag I knew had cost more than our first car. I looked at Wade and my chest ached. He seemed so young again, like the boy who once believed that monsters only lived under beds, not in marriages. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, a tall man with silver hair and a Rolex that flashed like a lighthouse, stepped forward. "Richard Piton, thank you for coming." Damon rose, confident, smooth. "Thanks for making time, Richard." They shook hands like old friends at a golf club, which, as I'd quietly confirmed with Patricia Chen, they were. Inside the conference room, everything felt cold. Glass windows, black chairs, a table so glossy it reflected the overhead lights like a blade. I sat across from Damon and Piton, directly in the line of fire. Ember and Wade took seats at the far end, like spectators to a polite execution. "Let's begin," Piton said. "Our goal today is an amicable resolution. No drama, just closure." Translation: "Let the woman roll over while the man takes the crown." He slid a thick folder across the table. "Here's the proposed settlement. Please review it at your leisure." I opened it slowly, letting the pages whisper. What they whispered was theft. According to this amicable proposal, I would walk away with a small downtown condo, half of our liquid savings, a modest monthly support payment. Damon would retain the house, the business, 3 vacation properties. The bulk of our investments, This seems generous, Piton said with the air of a man offering breadcrumbs to a starving dog. I raised an eyebrow. Generous how? Well, considering Mr. Morrison's role as primary provider, we've tried to balance long-term sustainability with realistic asset distribution. The house is quite a burden, after all. A burden, I said lightly. That's not what Damon called it when we hosted our 25th anniversary party in the garden. Ember shifted uncomfortably. Wade glanced at me, confusion beginning to flicker across his face. Piton cleared his throat. Also, there are some legal complications with the deed due to how the trust was structured. Best to avoid dragging that into court. I looked at Damon, his lips pressed into a line, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. I turned back to Piton, and if I sign this today, then the process will move quickly, 60 days, and everything will be finalised. No need for messy litigation. I closed the folder, slowly, deliberately. Where do I sign? Even Ember blinked. You're agreeing, Damon asked, voice uncertain. Of course, I said sweetly. Why not make things easy for everyone? Wade stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Mum, are you sure this doesn't feel fair? Fair, I echoed. Fair is for children's board games. This is life, and life is complicated. Piton slid the final page toward me, then offered a pen like it was a peace treaty. I took it and signed in calm, looping strokes. Naen Elizabeth Morrison. The same name I'd signed on a marriage certificate 42 years ago, the same name I would now use to reclaim everything I'd built. Excellent, Piton said. You'll receive copies of the final paperwork within the week. I stood, straightening my coat. Thank you. Mr. Piton, you've made this so simple. Of course. Outside the building, Wade pulled me into a hug, his brow furrowed. You don't seem upset, he said quietly. Oh, I'm devastated, I replied with a wink. But don't worry, sweetheart. I'll be just fine. Ember slithered to Damon's side, clinging like ivy. You were so brave, she whispered. I'm so proud of you. I almost laughed, but I didn't. I just smiled. Let her have her moment. Let her imagine herself queen of a stolen castle. They had no idea the foundation beneath them was already crumbling. Later that evening, I called Patricia Chen. It's done, I said. They think they've won. Her voice on the other end was calm and precise. Then it's time to begin phase 2. I sat in my kitchen, a fresh pot of tea steeping beside me. The light above me buzzed faintly old wiring I kept meaning to fix. But tonight, the hum felt like applause. 60 days. They had no idea. It was raining when Wade showed up at my doorstep, drenched and shaking not from the storm, but from the kind of betrayal that strips you to the bone. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there in his soaked hoodie, holding his phone like it had betrayed him too. Sweetheart, I said, stepping aside, come in. He walked past me stiffly, like a man carrying invisible weights. I brought him a towel, but he didn't take it. He just sat on the couch and stared at nothing for a long moment before speaking. I saw the messages. That was all he said, but I knew exactly which ones he meant. My heart ached for him, but I forced my voice to stay calm. Take your time. He blinked hard, then looked at me. They weren't careful. Ember and Dad. They didn't even bother deleting anything. I found hundreds of texts, photos, jokes, plans. They've been doing this for almost a year. A year. 12 months of lies, of family dinners, of birthday toasts and holiday smiles, all of it rotten beneath the surface. I'm so sorry, I whispered, placing the towel in his lap anyway. I confronted her. He continued. This morning, she didn't deny it. She laughed, said I was naive to ever think she loved me, said Dad could give her things I never could. That cut deeper than anything, not the affair itself, but the casual cruelty Ember wore like perfume. She actually said that I asked. Wade nodded, his jaw clenched tight. I thought of the trust clause, the way Ember believed she was on her way to owning my house, the way she'd plotted her escape like a general planning a war. She had no idea I'd already built the minefield. Wade finally took the towel and wiped his face. Sage was the one who told me to look. She said she couldn't stay quiet anymore. I nodded slowly. She came to me first, weeks ago. He looked up, stunned. You knew? I did. And you didn't say anything. I watched. I listened. I planned. I reached over, covering his hand with mine. I didn't want you hurt, but I also didn't want to move until I understood everything. His face twisted in pain. I feel like such a fool. You're not, I said firmly. You were lied to by two people who were supposed to protect you. That doesn't make you a fool. That makes them monsters. He didn't cry, not really, but his eyes stayed wet and his shoulders sagged under the weight of betrayal. Just then, a soft knock sounded at the door. I stood and opened it to find Sage, her face anxious, her umbrella dripping. I'm sorry, she blurted. I didn't mean to intrude. I had to see how he was. Come in, I said, stepping back. When she saw Wade, her expression crumbled. Wade, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. I didn't want to believe it myself. Wade stood slowly. For a moment, I thought he might lash out, but instead he simply said, You saved me. And then he hugged her. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was two people finding shelter in the middle of the same storm. Sage sat beside him on the couch, her voice breaking. I found more. Naen, in Ember's closet. A box of documents, notes, plans. She's been strategizing this for months, how to win Dad over, how to get the house, even how to twist the trust. I froze. She knows about the trust. Only the surface, Sage said. She hired someone to dig, but they didn't find the infidelity clause. Good. Let her believe she still had a chance. But then Sage pulled out another sheet of paper from her purse. This is what worries me most. It was a life insurance policy. On me, with Ember listed as the beneficiary. Wade stared at it in horror. She forged your signature. I checked. The company had no record of your consent. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. She wasn't just trying to steal the house, Sage whispered. She might have been planning to take everything. The room went cold. I closed my eyes, thought of the times Ember had brought me tea, insisted I rest, offered to help with errands, the glass of wine that made me dizzy once, the flu I'd had in June that hadn't felt like any flu I'd ever known. I opened my eyes. Wade, I said, my voice calm and clear, take this to the police, immediately. He nodded. Already did. Detective Martinez is opening an investigation. The sound of truth hung between us like a church bell. There was no going back now. Wade looked at me again. Mum, what do we do next? I smiled, small and dangerous. We stop pretending we're victims. We start acting like the survivors we are. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sun broke through the clouds, lighting up the wet grass like a promise. I've always believed that real strength doesn't show up when everything's going right. It arrives when you're handed proof that the people you trusted most are willing to cut you to the bone and you still get up the next day, fix breakfast, and make sure the houseplants are watered. That morning, I clipped dead leaves off my spider plant while waiting for Detective Martinez to call. Instead, I got a surprise. It came in the form of a manila envelope shoved through my mail slot, followed by the roar of a car engine tearing off down the street. I knew instinctively who had sent it, Ember. I didn't open it immediately. I just stood there with my hands resting on the kitchen counter, heart beating in that slow, dangerous rhythm that only comes when you're about to dig up a corpse no one wanted found. Inside more than I expected. A copy of my grandfather's original will. Ember had annotated it in her neat, venomous handwriting, circling clauses and scribbling notes in the margins. One phrase was underlined 3 times: beneficiaries restricted to bloodline heirs in perpetuity. I imagined her chewing her lip in frustration, wondering how to bend ironclad legal language to her will. There were also printouts from her hired investigator daily logs, my walking routes, doctor's visits, even a note about which pharmacy I preferred. It felt less like surveillance and more like a predator studying prey. She really thought this would scare me, I murmured. But fear wasn't what I felt. What I felt was confirmation. She had gone too far, and she'd put it in writing. Wade came over within the hour. He sat at the kitchen island like he had the last time he scraped his knees on the playground, hurt but trying to be brave. Sage and I went through her storage unit, he said quietly. There's more. He slid over another envelope. Inside, a second forged insurance policy, this one with Wade's name on it. She was going to claim you were financially dependent, he said bitterly. She'd positioned herself as your caretaker in public, even wrote letters to the HOA saying you were suffering from early memory loss. I clenched my fists. She was building a narrative. Exactly. The kicker came when Sage joined us later that evening, clutching her phone. I need to tell you both something I should have said sooner, she began, voice tight with old guilt. This isn't the first time Ember's been involved in something suspicious. She sat beside Wade and took a breath that trembled. Our Aunt Eleanor died 2 years ago. Ember was taking care of her after her surgery. It was supposed to be temporary, just a couple of weeks while Eleanor recovered. Then suddenly, she was gone. She had a heart condition, didn't she? I asked. Yes, Sage said, but she'd been stable for years. She was doing fine, until Ember started giving her supplements. Then she went downhill fast. What did the coroner say? Natural causes, no autopsy. But afterward, Ember inherited her house and her savings. Wade's face darkened. Did you tell the police? I spoke to Detective Martinez. He's reviewing the case. If there's enough cause, they might request an exhumation. My mouth was dry. I wasn't sure if it was horror or rage. She didn't just want the house. I said she wanted everything, and she was willing to play the long game, even if it meant removing anyone in her way. We all sat in silence for a moment, the weight of that realization settling around us. Then Wade asked the question I'd been waiting for. What happens now? We confront them, I said, but not in the way they expect. He raised an eyebrow. You mean let them walk in like they still have a chance? Exactly. I picked up my phone and dialed the number I hadn't called in months. Damon answered after 3 rings. Naen, he said. Surprised. I didn't expect. I'd like to meet, I interrupted. At the house. There was a pause. I could practically hear him looking at Ember across their rented condo, wondering if it was a trap. When? Tomorrow afternoon. Bring her. Is this about the trust? It's about closure. Another long pause, then all right. The next day, they arrived in a sleek rental car, dressed like they were meeting a real estate agent. Ember was wearing oversized sunglasses and red lipstick that screamed confidence or desperation. Damon had trimmed his beard. That was almost cute, in a pathetic sort of way. I watched from the living room window as they marched toward my front steps like conquerors returning home. Sage and Wade stood with me behind the curtains. "Let me handle this," I said softly. "You sure?" Wade asked. I nodded. It's time. I opened the door before they rang the bell. "Come in," I said warmly. "Make yourselves comfortable." Damon looked confused. Ember looked smug. "I brought the papers," she said, "in case there's anything you need to sign for the transfer." "Ah, yes," I replied. "Let's go to the kitchen." They followed me like sheep to slaughter. As they sat, I placed 2 cups of coffee in front of them. Mine was tea. I never drank coffee, gave it up in 1989, but it gave me something to hold. Ember smiled. "I'm glad we could talk like adults." "Oh, I agree. Though you might want to enjoy that coffee now, because I'm guessing you'll be drinking prison-issued blend soon." Her smile froze. "Excuse me?" I reached behind me and set a stack of folders on the table. These contain every piece of evidence, every message, forged document, fake policy, and witness statement, already turned over to Detective Martinez, including the stuff about Aunt Eleanor. Damon looked at Ember. "What's she talking about?" "You didn't tell him," I asked sweetly. "Oh, darling, he doesn't know about the poisoning, the inheritance grab." Ember's face went sheet white. Damon stood. "What the hell is she talking about?" "Ember." "Sit down," I said sharply. "You'll want to hear the rest." I turned to Ember. "You almost got away with it. You seduced my husband, tried to destroy my son, but the thing you didn't count on was this: some houses don't crumble. They fight back." Outside, a police cruiser was pulling into the driveway. Sage opened the door and waved the officers in. Ember lunged from her seat, but Wade stepped in front of her. "You need to leave now," he said firmly. "This isn't your home." The officers approached. "Ember Holbrook, you're under arrest for insurance fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit felony theft." Ember screamed. Damon sat frozen in his chair, shaking his head. "This can't be real," he muttered. "You set us up." "No," I said calmly. "You set yourselves up. I just handed you the rope." As the officers led Ember out in handcuffs, she turned to me one last time, face twisted in fury. "You think this is over?" I sipped my tea. "No, dear, I think this is justice." The silence after the police car pulled away was almost louder than Ember's screaming had been. Damon stood in my kitchen like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him wasn't solid. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, his face pale. "Naen," he started, voice trembling. "I didn't know about whatever that was. She said it was all just rumors. I swear." I held up my hand. "Save it. We're far beyond apologies." He flinched, like I'd struck him. I made a mistake." "Mistake," I repeated, leaning against the counter. "Forgetting to take out the trash is a mistake. You seducing your son's wife? That was a choice." His shoulders sagged. "I didn't plan this. I didn't—" I cut him off with a sharp laugh. "Oh, don't insult me by pretending it just happened. I've seen the texts, the little rendezvous at the cafe, the perfume on your shirts. Do you know what it's like to lay next to someone who's already emotionally gone, to spend 42 years building a life, only to have them set it on fire for a thrill?" His mouth opened, then closed again. He had no answer. Wade stepped forward. "Dad, you didn't just betray Mum. You betrayed me. You let her use me." Damon's face crumpled. "Son, I—" "Don't!" Wade snapped. his voice harder than I'd ever heard it. "You don't get to call me son right now." I looked at my boy, my grown man, and saw the steel in his jaw. He was no longer trying to understand. He was choosing where his loyalty stood. And for the first time in months, I felt proud instead of broken. "Damon," I said evenly, "you need to leave. The house, the property, all of it, none of it belongs to you anymore. The trust made sure of that. Consider this your notice." He looked at me, stunned. "You can't just kick me out." I smiled. "Oh, I can. And I will." To drive the point home, I pulled out a copy of the trust documents from the folder on the counter and slid them across the table. "Read it. You were never the owner. You were a guest who overstayed his welcome." He stared at the papers like they were written in a language he couldn't read. I'll find a way to fix this," he muttered, more to himself than to us. "You won't," I said softly, "because you're not the man who could. That man died the day you decided Ember was worth destroying your own family." There was no shouting, no dramatic storming out. Damon just lowered his head and walked to the door. His steps sounded small, defeated. When the door closed behind him, Wade exhaled shakily. "I don't even know who he is anymore." "Neither do I said, "but we know who we are, and that's what matters." Sage placed a gentle hand on Wade's arm. "You're stronger than you think, Wade. Both of you are." For the first time that day, Wade smiled a small, tired smile, but genuine. "Thanks, Sage. I don't know what I'd have done if you hadn't told the truth." Her cheeks flushed slightly. I couldn't stand by and watch her tear apart this family. Not when you deserve better. I glanced between them. There was something in Wade's eyes, a softness when he looked at Sage that had never been there for Ember. It was too soon for anything romantic, but I could see the possibility of something real, something untainted by deceit. "Dinner," I suggested, needing to break the heavy silence. They both nodded. We ended up cooking together like we'd done when Wade was little, chopping vegetables, peeling potatoes, joking about who could ruin mashed potatoes fastest. Sage laughed at one of Wade's bad puns, and for the first time in weeks, my kitchen felt alive again. Over dinner, we talked about practicalities. Ember's arrest meant legal battles were ahead, fraud charges, the forged insurance policies, and possibly reopening Aunt Eleanor's case. Detective Martinez had promised to keep us updated. "I still can't believe she did all that," Wade muttered, shaking his head. "How does someone get that twisted?" "Greed is a slippery slope," I said. "Once someone decides they're entitled to everything, there's nothing they won't do to get it." "And Dad?" he asked. I sighed. "Your father, well, he made his choice. We'll let the courts finalize the divorce and handle the financial side. As for the rest, that's between him and whatever conscience he has left." The rest of the evening was quieter. After Sage went home, Wade lingered, helping me wash the dishes. "Mum," he said suddenly, "you handled all of this like some kind of general. I don't know how you stayed so calm." I smiled, though my chest tightened. Because I had to. Because someone had to show you that we don't crumble when people betray us. We bend, but we don't break. He hugged me, then tight, the way he used to after bad dreams when he was a boy. "Thanks, Mum, for everything." When he left, I sat alone for a while, listening to the ticking of the kitchen clock. My house felt different now, lighter, like it had finally expelled the poison Ember brought into it. I made a cup of chamomile tea and sat by the window, watching the moon rise for the first time in months. I didn't fish. I felt like the hunter. Tomorrow, I'd meet Patricia Chen again. We'd start the final paperwork to secure the trust, lock down every loophole, and make sure Damon and Ember could never claw their way back into my life. But tonight, I let myself breathe. The days after the confrontation passed like a long, quiet exhale. No police sirens, no lawsuits, no flaming bags on the porch, just peace. Which, in my house, was new. I'd spent so long walking on eggshells that I forgot what hardwood felt like under my feet. Even the silence was different. It didn't hum with tension. It simply existed. On the third morning, I poured myself a cup of coffee, yes, real coffee this time, and stared out the kitchen window. The daffodils I planted with Wade when he was 6 had bloomed early this year. Maybe they knew something I didn't. I sat down with a yellow notepad and a pen, no more folders labelled Operation Never Again. Wade joined me at the table not long after, still in his pyjama pants and slippers. He looked tired but lighter, like someone who'd taken off a backpack after carrying it too long. He reached for the coffee pot. "You're making plans." I nodded. "I think it's time." He took a sip, then leaned back in the chair. "What kind of plans?" "The kind that don't revolve around damage control." I said, "I'm talking about travel, writing, turning that dusty guest room into a proper reading nook, maybe joining a salsa class." Wade blinked. "Salsa?" I smirked. "Don't underestimate these hips." We both laughed, real, not forced, the kind that healed something small and unseen. But just as the laughter faded, his expression turned serious. "Do you ever think, maybe I should have seen it sooner, Ember? I shook my head gently. "You were in love. Love makes us see what we want to. That's not foolish, it's human." He stared down at his cup. I ignored signs. "Sage tried to tell me things before, so did you, in your own way." "You weren't ready," I said softly. "And that's okay. We all have a breaking point. Yours came right on time." He nodded slowly. "Have you talked to Dad?" he asked next, hesitating. I let that question hang in the air like a smoke ring. "No," I said at last, "and I don't plan to." Wade looked up, surprised, not even to say goodbye. I said goodbye the day he chose her over us. The rest is just noise. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I added gently, "You can talk to him if you need to. I won't judge you." He smiled faintly. "I don't need to, not anymore." We sat in a comfortable hush for a while, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Then the doorbell rang. I exchanged a look with Wade. Expecting anyone? Nope. Sage was still asleep upstairs. We weren't exactly running a bed and breakfast, but since the day Ember was arrested, Sage had quietly slipped into our lives like she'd always belonged here. I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet, but I could already see it, how she looked at Wade, how he checked her tea without being asked. Something was blooming between them, something gentle, something earned. I opened the door to find Patricia Chen on my porch, holding a thick envelope and a thermos labelled Lay. "I hope this isn't a bad time," she said, grinning. "Only if you came to serve me papers." "Nothing like that. May I come in?" "Always." She stepped inside, took in the scent of cinnamon rolls, and said, "You've been baking." "I bake when I feel safe," I said. She handed me the envelope. "This is the final audit on the trust. Clean as a whistle, Damon's been removed from all beneficiary tiers. The assets are now solely in your name and your son's. Ember never had a claim, she just thought ambition made her a bloodline. And the house I asked, legally unassailable. They'd need a time machine to touch it." I breathed out, long and deep. "Thank you, Patricia, for everything." She smiled, You know, most of my clients just cry and write angry Yelp reviews. You threw a better chess game than half the law school. I had motivation, vengeance, freedom. She stayed for coffee and a cinnamon roll, and by the time she left, the sun had broken through the clouds in that shy, apologetic way it does after a hard week. Sage came down the stairs, hair still tousled, holding a book I didn't remember owning. "Did I miss something?" she asked. "Just justice," I said with a wink. Later that evening, I went into the garden alone. I knelt beside the daffodils, pulled a few weeds, and pressed my hand into the soil. It was warm, ready, alive. I didn't need to rebuild everything. Some things were already growing again. Inside, the lights glowed soft and golden. Laughter drifted through the kitchen window. Wade was telling some ridiculous story, and Sage's voice was right behind his, teasing him for exaggerating. I closed my eyes and let the moment wrap around me like a quilt. They tried to bury me, but I wasn't a corpse. I was a seed, and I had finally begun to bloom. The days began to settle into a rhythm that felt oddly gentle. I wasn't used to that. After 42 years of managing Damon's moods and shielding Wade from the worst of our dysfunction, I kept expecting something to crash glass, a phone call, a lawsuit, but all I got was sunshine through the kitchen windows and the occasional hum of the neighborhood kids riding their bikes past the house. I started sleeping better, not just sleeping resting. My chest no longer carried the tightness of constant alertness. I wasn't bracing for the next betrayal, or wondering if the silence meant someone was plotting behind my back. I'd survived the storm. Now came the quiet after. Wade came by every other day, always bringing something small, a bag of oranges, a new screwdriver set, fresh muffins from the bakery down the street. He didn't say it out loud, but I knew. He was checking on me, trying to make sure I didn't fall into the kind of emptiness that Ember's betrayal had left behind. But the truth, I wasn't empty. I was finally full. One Thursday morning, he showed up with a surprise. Sage was with him, carrying a covered dish and a bright grin. "French onion soup," she announced proudly. "The real kind, with caramelized onions and Gruyere." "Well now," I smiled, stepping aside. "If you're going to feed me like this, you might never leave." "We'll take that risk," Wade chuckled. Over lunch, we sat on the back patio. Birds chirped in the garden. The daffodils were wilting now, but I didn't mind. Even fading things were beautiful when they had bloomed honestly. "So," Sage said after a while, "I got a job offer." Wade looked up from his bowl, really where. "A local law firm," she said. "Junior associate. Nothing glamorous, but solid." "That's amazing," I said. "Are you going to take it?" "I think I will," she said slowly. "It means I'd be staying here, in town." I glanced at Wade, whose smile was trying too hard to stay casual. "Well," I said, "this town could use a few more people who believe in truth." Sage blushed. I was thinking of moving away after Ember, everything, starting over, but then I realised I don't need to run from this. I didn't do anything wrong. "No," I agreed. "You didn't, and you helped expose something that needed to be stopped." Wade reached across the table and squeezed her hand. My chest warmed. I wasn't just witnessing healing, I was watching something new begin. That evening, I sat in my bedroom, the same room Damon once shared. I'd already replaced the sheets, rearranged the furniture, burned every candle he'd ever liked. I didn't want a single scent to linger. My closet was different too. Gone were the dresses I wore for appearances. Gone were the neutral tones Damon said made me look respectable. I wore colour now, deep emeralds, lavender, crimson. I opened a drawer and pulled out the photo album I hadn't looked at in years. There we were, Wade at 5 with a chocolate-smeared face, Damon holding a grill spatula like he knew what he was doing, me in the background, half smiling, always half smiling. But then I turned a page and found the photo that stopped me. It was from our wedding. Damon in a grey suit. Me, young, glowing, unsure. I traced my fingertip over that girl's face and whispered, "You did the best you could. You loved with all you had. And when it broke, you didn't." I closed the album gently. The next morning, I called Patricia. "Hey," she said. I was about to reach out. "Got some updates from the DA." "Oh." Ember's been denied bail. The forged policies and the attempted insurance fraud are too serious, and they're officially reopening Eleanor's case. There's enough circumstantial evidence now. I nodded, swallowing a lump in my throat. Good. It's what she deserves. "And Damon?" she asked. "He's been quiet, which is fine by me." "Well, his lawyer reached out. He wants mediation instead of a court battle." I sighed. "Let him have it. I'm not interested in dragging this through the courts. Just make sure he walks away with nothing more than he came with." "I will." I paused. "Patricia, thank you. I know I've said it before, but I mean it. You didn't just help me fight. You helped me remember who I am." Her voice softened. "Naen, you never forgot who you were. You just needed someone to remind you you're allowed to fight back." After we hung up, I walked outside, barefoot in the grass. The earth was warm under my feet, firm and steady. I tilted my face toward the sky and let the morning sun kiss my skin. No more hiding. No more shrinking. I was 65 years old. I'd lost a husband, uncovered a betrayal, and nearly watched my own son be destroyed by someone I once welcomed into my home. But I was still here. And I was still standing. Better yet, I was growing. Inside, my phone buzzed. A message from Wade. "You up for dinner this weekend? Sage and I want to cook for you. Also, I might have news." I smiled. Whatever that news was, I had a feeling it was going to be good. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself look forward to it. It's strange how the world keeps turning, even after yours has shattered and been rebuilt. This morning, I woke up to birdsong, not a screeching alarm clock, not the sound of raised voices or footsteps pacing angrily outside my bedroom door. Just birds. Just peace. I made my tea and walked barefoot through the kitchen. The floor felt cool, clean, mine. It's been 4 months since Ember was taken away in handcuffs. Her voice shrill with disbelief. 4 months since Damon walked out, leaving nothing behind but the bitter scent of regret. And in that time, something unexpected happened. I came back to life. Not all at once, not dramatically, just slowly, a little each day, in the quiet moments when no one needed anything from me, in the stillness of knowing I was finally safe. Wade and Sage, bless their hearts, they kept showing up, not out of obligation, but out of love. They helped me repaint the guest room, turned the backyard into a garden again. They even dragged me out to a jazz night at the local park. I hadn't laughed that hard in years. Last week, they brought me to see the office for their new practice, a small law and advocacy centre for elder rights. They named it the Naen Morrison Foundation. I didn't know what to say at first. I stood there, blinking at the brass plaque on the door. "Why me?" I asked them. Sage smiled softly. "Because you survived, and because now you're helping others do the same." Wade just said, "You showed us what strength looks like when no one's clapping." Sometimes I still sit in my living room and marvel at how different it feels. I changed the furniture, new curtains, fresh flowers. The light comes in differently now, like the house finally exhaled. There are no ghosts here anymore. Just me, a woman who once gave up her dreams for a man who didn't deserve her loyalty. A mother who watched her son lose himself to manipulation only to find his way back. A survivor who discovered that silence isn't always strength and speaking up can be the most loving thing you do for yourself. People ask me sometimes, would you go back and change it all if you could? And the truth? No. Because everything I lost taught me how to live on my own terms. Damon took my youth, but he didn't take my future. Ember took my trust, but she didn't take my voice. And both of them together taught me how to fight for what matters. Tonight, I'll make a simple dinner, maybe roast chicken, maybe soup. Wade and Sage will come by, probably with some funny story or news from their latest case. We'll eat, we'll laugh, we'll fill this house with something Ember could never create: warmth that isn't manipulative, and love that doesn't come with conditions. After they leave, I'll sit by the window and sip tea, watching the stars. I'll think of all the versions of me I used to be: the quiet wife, the tired mother, the lonely woman in the garage. And I'll smile, because none of those versions broke me. They simply carried me here, to this moment, to this peace. And I'll whisper to myself, soft, sure, unshaken, I'm still standing, and I always will be.